we had a flagpole, and there was a cannon there. It was the best German cannon from World War I that had been dedicated about 1926 there, and it was an indestructible toy. It was also pointed right at St. Joe's Church across the street. But we kids, that cannon was pretty tough. You couldn't demolish anything on it, so we climbed all over, did everything. And then World War II, they took it for scrap to send back to Germany as a bomb.
And what was it dedicated to?
It was dedicated to peace. The day that they brought the cannon and had it here, they closed the stores, they marched up Main Street, and the VFW and others dedicated this cannon to no more wars, to peace. And so that was an interesting way. It was the afternoon. I think they had some music and speeches, but it was really a formal dedication of that cannon with the idea that that was the war to end all wars. For the World War II, we had blackouts at night, and they had practice blackouts. And so on one occasion, when everybody was supposed to either have all their shades pulled or their lights off, and we had the air raid warden. There were people through the city whose job it was to monitor things. So as a Boy Scout, our people from our troop went with various air raid wardens that night and stopped at houses that hadn't complied with the blackout regulations to ask them to do one of the two: pull the shades or turn the lights off. So that was interesting. We thought the Japanese might come over from the Russian area and bomb us, so we wanted to have the lights out in our town as well as a lot of other towns.
And why was that?
Well, just so we couldn't be seen as a target, not to give them any hint. And to save electricity, they turned off all the stoplights in Hopkins through the war.
And what happened with that? Because that was one of my other...
Well, when the war ended in Japan and they turned the stoplights on again in Hopkins, I worked at Dahlberg Ford, which is on 11th and Main Street, and that stoplight hadn't worked for 4 years. People forgot and suddenly realized it said stop, and so there were various collisions. I can remember one particular that a car stopped as he was supposed to. The guy behind him, with whatever inattentive driving he had, hit him in the back end. And I remember a whole load of dirt dropped out from underneath the car that got hit. But it took him a while to remember that now the stoplights were back on.
It was talked about almost every day. The teacher would talk something about it. And then there would be days that we were to bring contributions for a certain part of,
Okay.
which that went on quite often,
And what would those be? What were the contributions?
Oh, food, different foods, and clothing.
Okay.
More non-perishable things.
And Mr. Feierabend that I had somewhere, I think it was around 5th grade, I think he was a Navy pilot. He got called to duty, and my understanding was I think he got killed in the South Pacific campaign. And then the history teacher, what was his name? Excuse me. He was in the Philippines. And,
Is it Don Holscher? Don Holscher?
Yeah, that's what it was,
Yes.
Don Holscher. And when he came back from the Philippines, because in that part of the world malaria was a big thing, and he had contracted malaria, and for years his skin always still had that yellowish tinge to it of the malaria. So he had gone to war. My third grade teacher, Miss Schwann, took a leave of absence and went to drive a Red Cross ambulance during the war. So she was gone. I guess those are about the three teachers I remember that were in World War II. Old coffee house, many Hopkins men departed for World War II training from that depot, and so it's kind of historic. It was, you know, one of the early depots where that was the stop for the train that came from through here. And Hopkins actually was known as West Minneapolis up until about 28, I think it was, when it officially became Hopkins. But many people from World War II service, that's where they left.